Okay.
It's ready. We had called to order the meeting of the Town Board of Commissioners for the Town of Pittsboro, regular meeting for September 12, 2016. And as is our usual custom, we'll pause for a moment of silence. We are especially thinking of the anniversary of the 9/11 attacks that occurred over the weekend and the celebrations that occurred here on the dedication of the monument. And I understand that that went very, very well, and it was a very moving and touching experience. We have our Pledge of Allegiance. I don't think we have any scouts tonight. Jay, so would you...
Would everyone rise, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
We have a revised agenda before us, including the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, or a motion made to modify the consent agenda?
I'd like to modify the agenda, and I've got a question on item 6. And so if we could approve that as old business item number 1.
Okay.
I think it could be very brief.
And I understand that there is a interest in looking more carefully at language in the minutes of our last meeting, which was August 22nd. Is there a motion regarding the delay of those minutes approved?
I'd like to remove that from the consent agenda and table that until the next meeting.
With those particular modifications, is there a motion to approve the modified consent agenda? So moved. Moved by Bette Wilson Foley, seconded by Michael Fiocco. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. And that is the consent agenda. Is there any modification other than what's already been spoken to regarding the regular meeting agenda? Then may I have a motion to approve the regular meeting agenda?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Michael Fiocco, seconded by John Bonnet. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. There are no persons signed up for our public expression, and so we'll go then to mayor updates. I'd like to remind folks that we are continuing to have Monday with the mayor, and I've had several very nice visits from constituents and interested people who I've referred some to the Economic Development Office and some to various other agencies to help them with issues or problems. And it's been a very, very nice experience to be in the office on Mondays with constituents. Since we last met, I've been to a Family Violence and Rape Crisis event, a chamber event on development. On the 1st of September, I met with other mayors and chairs of in the Triangle J Council of Governments area. We met at Sanford and had a tour of their very beautiful new facility, since they have renovated the old buggy company. On the 9th of September, we had a retirement party for one of our longtime employees, J.A. Thank you, Lester. We only known him 30 years. I don't know why I would forget his name. And on the over the weekend, we had the Habitat for Humanity Classic Cars event, and tomorrow I'll be attending the Economic Development Council meeting. Are there other updates from other commissioners who are liaisons to other committees in the area?
I'll just mention that I missed last week's Main Street meeting. I was out of town. two young people who grew up in Pittsboro and got married in Highlands, North Carolina. It was a real treat to be there. And the Pittsboro Downtown Association meeting is this coming Wednesday, so I'll have more to say next meeting.
I serve on the Arts Council Board, and just going to mention that Clyde Fest is coming up on September 24th. If people want to mark the calendars for that, it's a great event for young children. Unfortunately, everything's there. Okay. And also, I'll just remind everybody that the Chatham County Fair is scheduled for September 22nd through 25th. It goes all the way through Sunday this year, which is great. It's a wonderful local event. I never miss it. I love it. I encourage everybody to come.
Thank you.
John, have you been to?
I know Commissioner Baldwin's wanting to reserve her voice. I'm sorry she's not feeling well, but I want to second that about the fair. I have so enjoyed it in recent years, especially this past year. But the only update that I have is on the climate change, the Chatham County Advisory Committee on Climate Change, and that group will be meeting this week. So there should be something interesting to report at the next meeting. But I will mention that I was privileged to be invited to speak at a related conference, North American conference in Corvallis, Oregon, a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things that I learned there was a real revelation for me about the very significant importance of land use as regards the ability of soils and the landscape to hold carbon. And so Chatham County has a rare opportunity in that we have so much land in farming and forestry. And it just so happens that most of the policies that would help address climate change on the land actually help rural enterprises and help farms and forests. So I'll report more later, but I don't want to get into the weedy details. Thank you.
Great. And if you're submitting elements to the fair for judging, such as vegetables or livestock or whatever, artwork, yes. There is a separate deadline for those. I think it's Monday through Wednesday to submit either articles that need refrigeration or that don't, and hopefully the livestock doesn't need refrigeration. So, all right. So we've moved item 6 off of the consent agenda and put it as the first piece of old business. So this is an item to approve an ordinance amending the town of Pittsboro operating budget for the what is known as the I&I, inflow and infiltration project.
Okay, I'm really excited that we have this opportunity to get such favorable terms on a substantial amount of money to do this important work. I think it's one of the best ways we can increase our sewer capacity. In fact, you get a lot of bang for your buck here. But the thing that struck me is odd, and I just wanted to make sure I was reading this correctly. While I say that we get a lot of bang for the buck, one of the cost items identified was erosion control and seeding for $114,000, and I thought that was an odd number.
It's probably an estimate based on the projected land disturbance.
So that's just a budget number?
Yeah.
We don't have because it's associated with a particular subcontractor.
Right. The unit cost.
Yeah. I'm assuming it's just
And seeding.
Okay, so that's an estimate. You don't think it's that much?
It was approved all the way up to the state and back and with the plan, so if it's a high number, that's good. We can
We're going to
be
work into it?
Yeah, we can work into it.
Okay. No need for contingency.
That means we should expect the budget less in that area. Okay. All right. Does that satisfy the request?
Yep.
Back onto the regular agenda, then we have the Chatham County Housing Project Committee.
I think we should approve that. I make a motion that we approve this.
I'm sorry, that's right. We pulled it off.
Yep.
Mhm.
I second that.
Motion made by Michael Fiocco, seconded by John Bonnet. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Then on to the housing project. Ryan Grubeck and Triangle J Council of Governments Representative Aspen Drummond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You'll recall, just briefly, just to set the table and try to give a brief description on how we got here. You'll recall back in November of 2015, a meeting of the joint elected officials with Chatham County and other governments in the county. We were privileged to receive a presentation from, I believe, Triangle J at the time about affordable housing issues. And it was at that meeting that consensus developed to have the managers meet in the county and suggest a plan of attack, so to speak, to move forward on the issue of affordable housing. Subsequent to those meetings between the managers, the county began developing a rapport with Triangle J on a possible strategy regarding affordable rental housing. And in your attachment, actually this evening, you have in your packet this evening, you have a memo or a piece from Triangle J that has spun out of this process, and Aspen is here tonight from Triangle J to talk a little bit about the Housing Committee, where we're at, what we want to do with this moving forward, and then ultimately to see if there's an interest in selecting a Pittsboro commissioner for involvement on this very directed work activity that does have a set time limit and sunset to it, and so hopefully is something that we can get things done within the framework of this one particular issue. But without further ado, I turn this over to Aspen maybe to talk a little bit about the Housing Committee and what we'd like to do with it, or what we're proposing, I guess, to do with it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So I am the project lead for this project with Triangle J. And really, as Brian mentioned, the goal is to focus on affordable rental housing for this specific project, because there was a sense that there's been a lot of work on homeownership in the county in the past, and a lot of support for Habitat for Humanity and Empowerment Inc. and other providers of homeownership. But there's an interest and a need for rental housing that hasn't really been filled. So the purpose of this task force is to really dive into that issue specifically and figure out what are some best practices that other communities have used, what are some strategies that have worked really well in this housing market and this community with the values that you guys have. And it's as Brian mentioned, it's a very time-limited one, probably about a one-year task force. And I'll go through the memo a little bit and describe what we're looking for in an appointee from your board and some of the products and tasks we'll be doing throughout the year. So the ultimate product, the tangible product, really is a series of affordable housing strategies and a policy document that will be for rental housing in Pittsboro, Siler City, and unincorporated parts of Chatham County, with the implementation plan that goes along with those strategies. And that's sort of the tangible document that we'll produce. But we also are hoping that this process will help engage members of the community and get buy-in on the whole rental housing, affordable housing issue in the community. And also, it's an opportunity to educate members of the boards in Pittsboro, Siler City, and Goldston, as well as Chatham County, and learn a lot more about what affordable housing is, what that term means, and what it means in Chatham County specifically, and what are some ways to address it, and what are some opportunities that are present here. So as you can see, we're looking for up to 6 members on our committee. The chair, Dennis Streets, has already offered and is willing to be chair as sort of a nonpartisan role. He is the director of Chatham County Council on Aging. I'm sure you know him very well. We're also looking for a Chatham County Commissioner, Goldston, Pittsboro, Siler City Commissioner, and then hopefully also a Cary Town Council member. They have not confirmed their participation yet, but we're hoping that they will also join us. And so what we're expecting from committee members is really to, we're going to have 2-hour meetings, probably about 6 times over the next year. So come to those meetings, be ready to engage in discussion, prepare beforehand with reading the things we send to you beforehand. But we really don't need you to have a knowledge or or previous experience in housing. We're looking for you to have a knowledge of your community, of some of the issues and opportunities that are present in Pittsboro. And we hope that if you come prepared to our meetings, we have a good discussion, we can really sort of get you out in and out of there pretty efficiently. So it should be a time-limited task. So of those 6 meetings we're hoping to have between October and next summer, the first 2 meetings are really sort of setting the stage. So the very first one, we're hoping to define common language around what affordable housing is, identify the problems and priorities that are specific to rental housing in the county and in the towns, and that might differ between the towns and the county. As part of that meeting, Triangle J staff will present on some of the information that we have of existing challenges that are here. And we'll also want to identify knowledge gaps. So given you may not know a lot about housing, what are some questions you have? What are some things you want to know that we can help answer? And then also just review and finalize the mission and charge. So we're all clear about what our role is, what we're doing, and what our hope is for the next few meetings. The second meeting is to really define success. What would that look like if we were successful in this effort? What would that look like? And we're hoping to have key outcomes and goals as part of that. And when I say specific, we're hoping for something that says we want to increase the rental housing supply for this population by X amount of units by X time frame. So we want to have measurable goals we can measure our success by in the future. And in between the first and second meetings, Triangle J is going to engage with developers, landlords, and practitioners in the housing market to figure out what their perspective is in kind of an informal setting, and to share their ideas and challenges for what they're seeing in the market here. And so meeting 2 will bring that feedback back into meeting 2 for your discussion. And then meetings 3 to 5, this is all very rough framework, but meetings 3 to 5, we hope to take those issues identified at the first and second meetings and really dive into them more deeply. So at those meetings, we'll take an issue and we'll clarify it, we'll figure out what best practices and strategies there are in this region, in the country, and then identify some recommendations that would work in this context. And we'll do that for a couple of issues at each meeting, so that by the 6th meeting, we'll have all these recommendations in a strategy toolbox. We'll go through them, refine them, have the Housing Committee endorse a summary of goals and strategies that are in that toolbox, and then also look at implementation, which will look at the time frame for those recommendations, who's responsible, and any additional resources or work that needs to happen to help make them come to fruition. And so after this Housing Committee is done, what we're hoping is that that product will come back to each of the boards and councils for their endorsement. And then we also hope that the people who serve on the Housing Committee can act as champions and advocates of this strategy going forward and really help carry those things into implementation, so that we have people who are engaged in the process, know what's going on, can communicate really well with the committee members about what's in that document, and then work to help make it reality. So with all of that, do you have any questions or any clarification you'd like about the process or the project in general?
Does the board have questions?
I do have a question. So basically, you're just looking at rental housing. You're not looking at homes which someone can purchase, because everyone is not going to want to purchase a Habitat home. So
Correct.
when are you going to look at just affordable housing in reference to purchasing a home?
So
Is
the
that
hope-
the next step?
Yeah, the hope is really that the last few efforts have really focused on homeownership more than rental.
Okay.
This will focus on rental. And then after this process, we're hoping that that'll tie in really well with the Chatham County Comprehensive Plan update and the affordable housing element in that plan. So the engagement around that process as well will sort of, hopefully, if timing works out right, dovetail into those. And after that, there could be an ongoing committee that's more community member-based to carry on a sort of a comprehensive affordable housing strategy that includes rental and homeownership after this process. That's a great question.
And there does seem like there's a real need for rental. Definitely what I hear people say.
It's a different market, so it's a tricky issue for sure.
Yeah, I mean, homeownership is not right for everybody.
No.
I think that if I could, I think the data seemed to bear the need for rental housing out, and it was discussed back in November of that meeting. And I think that perfect examples at Belmont Point Apartments and how quickly those filled up in the area.
There's so much interest in that.
Yeah, so I think, like Aspen said, I think this is a first directed look at what data-wise seems to be a defined need, realizing, of course, that home ownership is an ultimate goal for us.
Is membership too.
That's true also, but in some cases, I think people went to Belmont Point because they could not find an affordable home in this.
Sure.
So, yeah.
So tonight, if I could, certainly, as I indicated in my memo, if you feel empowered to appoint a member from the board tonight, if somebody has a strong interest in it, then surely, that would be great. If not, I think what Aspen is looking for is maybe some direction on an appointment by the end of the month. We still have one more meeting if you guys want to talk about it and think about it a little bit. So it's really your pleasure.
Could we say that anyone who has an interest in it could speak to the town clerk, and if there were multiple persons, then we could sort that out and that we would work on it at the next meeting? Would that be amenable? Or do we have ideas right now?
Commissioner Baldwin and I have been quietly exchanging some words and notes, and she has an interest, but I also know that you're quite busy, and so if you're open to perhaps other possible appointees, I would offer your nomination now, or a hold at your pleasure.
Well, I can do that. If anyone else is interested, I can do that. I would love to be on it.
I'd be willing to serve as an alternate. I'm interested too, but I understand to you, so I would be the alternate. I think there's a need for that.
I'm extremely interested as well, but I would definitely second your motion to Commissioner Baldwin.
All right, then we can state that there is a motion on the floor by John Bonnet to appoint Mayor Pro Tem Pamela Baldwin with Bette Wilson Foley to be an alternate to serve on the Chatham County Housing Project Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Aspen.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is the update from Paul Horn with the Parks Department. And you have a memo from Paul in your packet.
Yes. Town manager wanted me to just highlight some of the things we've been doing lately. Some of these are physical, tangible products like the railing that Mayor Perry recommended some time ago, and there are 2 railings now on the community house. Local architect Grimsley Hobbs provided pro bono design work on those, and Stony Brook Farms nearby Chapel Hill executed and installed them. The benches, these are mirrored on the other side symmetrically. Chatham Park provided a donation for park benches, and this was the best place for them, so their donation covered much of the cost of the 2 benches and their installation. So we thank you for that gift. Modest improvements, but I think they'll go a long way towards making the community house more inviting. The grant from the County Health Department, which provided branding of the individual parks and a system map, and which I trust people are familiar with. They're certainly available out in the entrance room there, are available, and they're very successful and in demand by local realtors and as well as merchants and the historic museum places which hand out these kind of things. Also, the signage which was associated with this project has started to go up. So here's 2 examples from McClenahan Park and Kiwanis Park. The UDO, we've been reviewing anything particularly related to parks and recreation or open space. And I think that input's been valuable, and certainly, unlike the physical projects, it's kind of the bottom of the tip of the iceberg. A lot of the real work that's getting done is reviewing these documents, which will have implications for many, many years down the road, and trying to shape those as best we can now. And finally, we have a Parks Comprehensive Master Plan, which was budgeted this year. The RFQ is on the street now. We'll get our final submissions tomorrow. Is the last day for those submissions, so we'll start the selection process shortly thereafter. And also, Mr. Griesbeck asked me to look into kiosks for downtown. I think Mayor Perry had also requested some input from me on that, and I provided him with potential locations, potential costs based on the various types of materials that one could use, from aluminum to stainless steel to a steel powder coat matching the green of the existing things downtown. And essentially those kiosks match the ones in Chapel Hill, so it's the same design. They were nice enough to share that design with us, and I've gotten quotes from a manufacturer or several manufacturers, and all the bids have come in. So I can provide the latest updates and pricing to the town manager, and he can vet that through the Main Street Community Committee or through this board, or whatever the process is from here. And I actually have copies of that. I'm happy to share that with the town clerk. I don't want to introduce things to the board in an unorthodox manner, so that can wait. Certainly not critical for you to see that today. You're welcome.
Thank you, Paul. I really deeply appreciate the various things that such as the railings at the community house. That was important for some older folks that had spoken to. Are there other questions?
Oh, I just have one question. It's regarding the town lake park. Several times I've been through there lately, and do we have a problem with that dam or anything back over there? Because it looks like it's not even holding water.
The mechanisms which drain the lake, one of them's not functioning at all. I've tested that. The other one seems to be stuck. One's turning around and not having any effect at all. The other one seems to be stuck. So our town engineers has a firm looking at those that outlet point and looking for a solution.
So when NC State did that, we had that grant with them. That was considered a wetland pond, more or less. Is that correct?
Yes,
but finish anything on those gates? They didn't work on that.
I think they built the what I call the bunker, the outlet, the concrete bunker around that. But I think the actual mechanism and the pipes were not addressed with that study. There wasn't budget for that, from my understanding.
But we are looking into maybe repairing that at some time. Okay.
We are.
All right.
Hopefully soon. I agree with you. It does look. It's sad to see that.
Yeah.
Hopefully the wildlife will bounce back.
Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir.
Paul, how long do you think the selection process will be for the master plan?
You know, it really depends on how many we get back and what kind of response we get, but just kind of to throw out a number, I'm thinking probably 2 weeks. You know, if I get 50 responses, that may not be accurate, but you know, that's my intent right now, is to try to crank through that within a few weeks.
You say they're due tomorrow?
That's correct.
Have you received any?
No, and that's not unusual.
It's not a deadline?
Exactly.
Right.
We'll get a flood of them tomorrow, probably hand-delivered in 3 couriers.
Okay.
We'll see.
I just want to add that I was at an event over the weekend and was talking with some folks from Chapel Hill, and they were talking about what great parks the town of Pittsburgh has. So I thought I would pass that compliment on to you.
Great.
Pittsburgh's getting a reputation for having doing this.
Thank you.
Paul, one more.
Yes, sir.
I'm curious, I don't want to belabor it, but I'm curious if you can give us a little bit of insight into your discoveries in the UDO.
And I didn't want to belabor that either or have it appear to be a self-aggrandizing attaboy, but there were two particular instances along with several smaller ones. One was a proposal to lessen the amount of land that would be dedicated. That was a minor fraction of a percentage, but over time and over the scope of the entire town, that adds up quickly. The other proposal, and I think, and I had stated in here, it was, I think, inadvertent errors from the consultant had changed our existing ordinance, which calls for assessments of land to be post-development value. Now, the difference between pre-development value, and they changed it to pre-development value, that that can be a complex equation of the difference between there, but a good rule of thumb is anywhere from 1.5 to 3 times pre to post development value. So that's a significant amount of money, and if that were not caught, then that would definitely have been not good for the town.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anything further for Paul? Thank you very much, Paul. Our next item is a request to rezone property on Thompson Street, Victoria Vale.
Okay, this is REZ 2016-06. Pat Cawthorn has proposed to rezone 1345 Thompson Street from RA Residential Agriculture to C2 Highway Commercial. The parcel is approximately 0.957 acres. It has been zoned RA since the early 1990s and currently houses an insurance company. The future land use plan has designated this property for mixed use, and the surrounding properties are currently zoned RA and C2. The staff recommends approval of the proposed amendment, as the proposed amendment is consistent with the future land use plan, and the location of the property is suitable for highway commercial. A public hearing was held on August 22nd, in which no citizen came forward to speak. The planning board reviewed the rezoning request at their meeting on September 7th and recommended approval by a vote of 5-0. Any questions?
Other questions for Victoria? I would simply like to state that this insurance office has been there for a couple of months, and I guess there's sort of an old worn-out expression about seeking forgiveness rather than permission, but I think that's a genuine concern, that this board wants to be apprised of things before they come to our attention, either through another source or through compliance zoning. So I would just note that is that's a concern of mine that I believe is shared by the planning board. Are there questions, or is there a motion? We have a split situation where we look at the consistency statement first and then look at the motion to rezone. I'm not seeing the consistency statement in my package, but
Separately attached. There were packets on your desk.
Oh, yes, of course. Here we go.
Mayor, I did attend that planning board meeting, and I think your assessment is accurate, that there were concerns stated that evening. Yet the planning board did vote on both counts in support of the rezoning request. Just that we might be getting ourselves into a situation where zoning activities or activities in residential zones, for example, are not in compliance and then the owner or the occupant requests a rezoning after the fact. I think Mr. Jones spoke in pretty significant length with the planning board about that and their concerns, and just as an observer, I was satisfied that he takes it very seriously and is working to help the community understand better that we need to up our game and be in better communication as regards how businesses are either in or out of compliance with zoning. Maybe that's not a fair characterization. Maybe Jeff would.
It's one that I shared with the planning board, that we want to be proactive as much as staff knows that there are instances like this happening. And we found out by a neighbor for this rezoning and went through the process of contacting the new property owner. And we are where we are today. And there may be other instances where there's businesses being ran out of residentially zoned properties, or vice versa, where people are living where it's commercial or industrial zone properties. And we just need to work through those issues and see how we can come to a point where we're not being overly punitive to existing businesses that have been operating for a long time. We want them to come into compliance and try to get them into compliance through a rezoning process or a special use process or what have you to get them into compliance. But it really is staff just being aware that there's an issue and then trying to approach that business owner or property owner. One of the things that could come about in the future and future budget ordinances is maybe making a punitive charge to, like, a rezoning right now is $360. If it was after the fact, after the business, maybe it would be more. And that would be somewhat of a, well, maybe if I have to pay double, I can go ahead and get that started. I've practiced that way in the past in other places, so that could be on the table for us to discuss in the future.
Thank you, Jay. Any further questions of either Victoria or Jeff Jones? So we have first the consistency statement. You have before you the one that was adopted by the planning board. And is there a motion to approve the consistency statement?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved by Jay Farrell, seconded by John Bonnet. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Next, we have the motion to adopt the rezoning.
I make a motion to adopt the rezoning, case REZ-201-06.
Thank you. Motion made by Jay Farrell.
Second.
Seconded by Bette Wilson Foley. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Old business item number 4. We have an update from Chatham Park investors. And greetings. Good evening.
Yes, you get to listen to me for 12 minutes. I've got some slides here tonight that hopefully bring you up to date so that you'll know what's going on. So just as you said, you want to keep up with what our progress has been and what it's going to be in the future, and you don't get any surprises coming in. And so the slideshow, the first part of it is things that we already have constructed. Then I'm going into things that are under construction and planning, and then some future items. I hope I can get done from here. So let's see. The first one is the what we're calling our medical office building number 1, and that's the location over there across from Northwoods and behind the Bojangles. Hopefully a lot of you have been in there. That's the site plan for it. There's the building, and so I've given quite a few tours. UNC Medical is very pleased with that building. They have lots of customers, and if you haven't been there, please come out, and hopefully you're not sick when you go there, but hopefully you come out and see what we've done there. It has it's a LEED certified building. We haven't got our certificate yet, but we applied for it on all our buildings, and see some things we've done in the surrounding areas with the parking lots and with water conservation. All these buildings have purple pipe for reused water. When we get ready to have it, then all we do is hook it up. So that's all in our roads and our streets. So that's our first building. And then we have our second building, which we have an office in. There's a site plan for that, and you've probably seen that or been there. A lot of you have been there. We've had great success with that building. It's all rented up except for 2 spaces. We've got some people that are interested in those, and as soon as we fill that one up, we'll start on the next one, which I'll show you here in a minute. So we're really proud of that building. That's where our office is, so if anybody wants to come meet with us or see us, Maggie Richards mans that office for us. We also are manning our downtown office. We'll keep having our downtown office open for some time in the future. There's another picture of that building. It's got the unique shape of the awning in the middle, which catches our rainwater and saves the rainwater. Next drawing is showing the location of a hospice center. There's what the hospice center will look like. Grand open is tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Make sure everybody comes out. They have a ribbon cutting. We were just by there. It looks awesome. Glenn Wright, who was in charge of this building for UNC Medical, said that the people who've given a tour to from UNC are blown away. Said they cannot believe the quality and the aesthetics of this building. So make sure you come out tomorrow at 10 o'clock. They'll probably have some free food or cookies or something, but they're going to do a 10 o'clock groundbreaking, and they're expecting a lot of people and a nice day. So make sure you come out. I'm not sure when it's going to open, but probably in the next couple weeks. Here's our bridge. Our bridge is now complete. It's getting a final acceptance by DOT in the next couple weeks. It really doesn't go anywhere, but it does connect one side of the road with the other. That's a $6 million bridge that we built in entirety with no help from DOT or anybody else. We think it looks pretty good, and we're going to do some more landscaping on it and add some flowers in the spring, this, that, and the other. So that's the bridge. We're also under construction with what we're calling Freedom Parkway. That's the road down the middle of the woods there. And on the left side, you can see the hospice building being built, and at the top you can see the 2 office buildings that are constructed. Just off the picture over here is the Bojangles. That road will become the main road. It'll have a roundabout in the middle where those trucks are. And so the Suttles Road will become a secondary entrance. Freedom Parkway will become the main entrance, and it'll also hook into the shopping area to the south. We're hoping that road is complete sometime at the end of the year. We were trying to get it open before hospice, but the weather just kicked our butts, so didn't quite get it done. This is the lot number 1, which we have under contract with a fellow, and he's going to do a 14,000-foot retail center. Here's some of the renderings for it, and he's got several tenants already, some restaurants, and that site plan is into the town, and you'll probably be seeing it here in a month, but that's in for approval now in a 14,000-foot retail center. This is 2 new office buildings that we are doing site plans for, and we'll have those in next month. They are adjacent. Just to the bottom are the 2 existing buildings we have, the 25,000-foot UNC Medical building and our 16,000-foot other building that we're leasing out where our office is. These are the next 2 buildings. We're looking at a 24,000 and a 15,000-foot buildings, mainly for medical. We have quite a few calls for medical offices, so that'll be coming in the next couple months. As soon as we get leased up, we'll start on the next building, the 25,000-foot building. This is the shopping area, 44 acres north of Bojangles that borders 15501. We have a group that made a presentation to you about 2 months ago and showed some slides this is their latest site plan, but don't take it for granted because they've been through 20 of them, and it'll change tomorrow if we have another meeting with them. They're going through charrettes and planning. They have a place for a hotel, senior living, a live performance theater, brewery, restaurants, hotel. They got it going. The 14,000 foot I just talked about is just below that. And then to the right, a little parcel to the right down there is a 9,000 foot building that they propose to build in relation to that. You can see the roundabout in the middle of Russet Run Road and how that ties in very well with that. So that's probably a site plan for that will be coming in about 8 months on that, once they figure out exactly what they want to show. Got great interest. They've got double the interest than they have square footage to rent. So a lot of it. Here's some they showed before. Brewery with some local shops, senior housing with a live 240 seat theater. Then below this is Thales Academy is going to be coming in. They want to submit their site plan in the next 30 days. That's a 950 seat private school, and they're ready to get started because they want to be open in about 18 months. That's where it sits, right there at the bottom down there on Thompson Street. The school is in the bottom. Beside that, we're going to do a city park, town park. Above that would be a homeowners association swimming pool. So it's all tied together, and you can use the parking from the school, for the park, for the homeowners. Everybody gets tied together. We like to put everything together so there's not as much parking. And when you have events, you can use each other's parking. So the school would end up using the baseball field, and other people could use their soccer field. So that's going to get started here pretty soon. There's another site plan of it. Got a ball field right in the middle of the campus. The reason the buildings are set so far back is for loading. A lot of parents bring their kids to school, so you have to have a lot of stacking areas, and that's why it's laid out. That's their architecture of what they've done in the past. This is the lots that we're going to present here. We'll come in with some lots probably in the next 60 days. Thales Academy is in the bottom, as you see down here on Thompson Street, and this will be the lots that we come in around it. We have quite a bit of interest from builders that want to build houses, and so that will be our first section of housing.
How much?
How much what? How much will the housing be?
How much in the neighborhood? How many units?
We'll probably come in with like 30 to start with, but of that whole section there has like 800 homes in it, so apartments and homes. We'll come in slowly. We don't have the sewage to get any more, so I'll discuss that here in a minute. That's another close-up of the lots. And here again, this is changing as we go along.
Tim, what are that pink shaded area represent? Are those like...
Sir?
Are those like townhouses or something?
Townhouses there, and then single-family homes around it, yes. It'll be a blend of all that. And then up near the top is some rental. The pink up the top is some rental. Mostly single-family homes is what it is.
Thompson Street is this? I'm not clear where it's going to be.
Now, I'm hard here.
Where on Thompson Street? I'm just trying to...
The
Fire Tower.
Fire Tower Road is
Okay.
right here.
Okay.
It's just down from Fire Tower Road. Let me go back one. This is Fire Tower Road, and so it's just to the right of that.
Okay.
And then this, I'll show you this over here in a minute.
Before we leave there, it seems to me there's some really substantial changes that will have to be made to Thompson Street. Can you give me an idea of whether you're talking about 2 lanes, 4 lanes? What is, with turning school buses or turning parent traffic, I'm guessing that you're going to need at least some turn lanes.
Oh, turn lanes at a minimum, and we're doing we have to provide a traffic study with every site plan we turn in, so that's what we're working on now. And yes, we will have definite turn lanes, but we'll do some widening on there also. I can't tell you how extensive it is till I get to report, but we have to do. That's why we haven't submitted it yet. We're waiting on those specifications.
Yeah, because there's some houses on Thompson Street that are quite close to the street, so I'm assuming you'd have to take from the other side. Some of which you own and some of which you don't own.
That's very possible.
Okay.
And I don't know what the right-of-way is. Normally you have a 60-foot right-of-way, but I'm not sure in that location for that. This is a picture, a rendering of coming down the Interstate 64 bypass and the water tower. We have approval to build a water tower, so that's what it would look like when you come down the interstate. That's what it would look like when you're standing under it. It's a 300,000 gallon water tank. It's the same kind you see around in different towns. It'll have a twin sit beside it, which will be 1 million gallons built in the future, and this tank will revert from to reuse water in the future. So the 1 million gallon will be the main tank for fresh water. This will be reused in the future, but we won't need that for another 6, 7, or 8 years, depending on the growth. This shows the site plan. It comes off of Suttles Road and goes up to you can see the 2 tanks there. This is Suttles Road down here, and it comes up, and this is the small tank, this is the big one. This is the one we built at first, then we'll come in with a big one. This is sort of a roundabout way to get there, but when this is all developed, it'll just come off the parking lot and it'll be behind the hospital. This is where the hospital goes, it'll just be behind the hospital. But for the time being, we're building a temporary road to get up there for it.
Is that 1 million gallon tank elevated or on the ground?
It's elevated. It's 140. How big is that? 140? Is that about right? 140 feet tall. Looks like that. And then from the highway, it looks like that. Just over the trees. This shows the location again of the red one there is the 300,000 gallons. That's the one we're building first. And then the blue one is the 1 million gallons that we'll be building sometime in the future, depending on the growth. That'll be hooked back to 15501 with a 12-inch line, and then that'll be fed down the Chatham Parkway, and that'll be a loop line. So everything will be looped in the future. So we'll have a loop line there, 12-inch for that, which will feed that.
Before we leave the water tanks, when I first heard of your proposal to have the water towers, the smaller one was to be 500,000 gallons?
300,000.
I hear you saying that now. When it was first proposed, and I understood, I was at a utility briefing when you presented to staff, why the change from 500,000 gallons to 300,000?
Never has been 500,000. It's always been 3. We had a 3 and a million ever since I've been on this project.
Okay.
Yeah, so it hasn't changed. We don't need over 300 for the reuse. We don't need as much pressure as we need for the homes for that. But that's always been that. This is just an overall map, and I'm showing this area for our reclaimed water treatment plant. It's down here near Eubanks Road in this position. We did have it up here. We moved it because we're starting development in here first. We can take a lot of that sewage and treat it over here. Then those reuse lines flow back, and they'll flow back into that 300,000 gallon tank in the future. As a site plan, very preliminary site plan, we just finished it this morning, which shows a plant near Old 64. It'll have parking, and it'll have a nursery, constructed wetlands, a place where this parking lot on the right will be where buses and people can come and view the actual treatment in the plant. We can give tours to school groups. That's some of the renderings we showed before. We're trying to beautify that even more, and now we've got glass houses with pyramids on top. We're still refining exactly what the architecture would be, but that would be open for tour groups. And inside it's plants that the roots go 12 feet down into tanks, and the sewer is treated in a new efficient manner, like the one at Emory University, if you want to look that one up. This is our solar farm. Strata Solar still working on this. They finally got the substation worked out. They'll be coming in with a site plan that's going to look similar to that, and that's what solar farms look like. Sort of goes from that to that, and that'll be a 10 megawatt solar farm. 2 5s, one on either side of the power line. It'll feed power into the local grid. This is a drawing of Chatham Park Way. On the far side is Old 64. It starts at the Christian Village right beside that, very near that lot you just rezoned. It goes to the bridge. You can see the bridge that crosses over and then goes down Suttles Road. That road will eventually go north and tie into 15501 eventually. This will be a 4-lane divided in some sections, and then it drops down to 3-lane, and the bridge is 3-lane. In the future, the bridge has another 3-lane bridge sometime in the future when it warrants it. That road has been designed and approved by North Carolina Department of Transportation, and as soon as we get a grading permit, we'll be starting on that road, and we're going to start with this section here, which goes from Old 64 by the Christian Village and goes up to the First Creek, and then we're going to put a new entrance into the Christian Village. You can see that yellow road coming out of the bottom. That's a new entrance into the Christian Village. They were concerned about ingress and egress, and there will be turn lanes on Highway 64 there for that. At the same time, there's the ramps that go to the bridge. You build a bridge first, then we build the ramps. The ramps are being approved by North Carolina Department of Transportation. Should have that approval in about 30 days. Then we'll build the ramps. So the ramps, you'll be able to come off of 64 bypass and get on the bridge and go all the way down to Old 64, or go north into our development, or get on Suttles Road. There's Suttles Road there. It'll go by the water tanks that way. We hope to be under construction with all that in the next 6 months. Hope to have it finished within 24 months and completed. So that'll relieve a lot of traffic trying to get from Old 64 to the bypass. It'll be open for whatever. Along the road, we have our section for our offices. We have 1 million square feet designed to go along that road. And our housing is just off of that road to the north, where Thompson Street will be starting. Small area plan, everybody's heard enough about that. That's finishing up. We should have that submitted in the next 45 days. Should be coming in to you for review of that north area, the whole north area. So that's my thing. I'll be glad to take questions, make something up, do something, whatever.
Tim, I have a question. I thought I understood that the tank was to be, when we first started, 500,000 gallons.
No, sir. Nothing. I'm the guy doing it. It's always been 300.
Okay.
It's a
What
reuse.
about the water that was talking with Adam about going, the line that was going to go into town down 501, that was going to have a valve to go to the Horton tank? Is that coming off of this 300,000 gallon tank?
There are some reworking of valves and pumps that are going to help the town's existing water tanks. Fred, you might want to discuss that.
I think you're referring to the automated control valve that part of this project will install at the 1 million gallon tank, so Adam can run water straight south and not go through the standpipe in the 1 million gallon tank. Shoot it straight in to south part of town from.
So that was supposed to go to Horton tank.
Yeah, it'll go straight
Okay,
to Horton
okay.
tank. Yeah.
But not until the $1 million tank.
No. That's what was designed in later in the design process, after we had those concerns about water quality and aging and that sort of thing. So,
Are those tanks, are they going to service any of our town residents on the north side of town?
The tanks are for pressure, so yes, they pressurize the whole town system.
there's a pressure zone.
I know we're going to
Yeah.
have PRVs, right?
Yes.
On all residents, is that correct?
In that pressure zone.
No, on the small pressure. I think it's 80 homes need pressure relief valves. Right around Fire Tower Road, right in that area. But we don't, with the homes we're building and the business we build, there's no pressure, there's not enough pressure to meet the minimum fire requirements in our area, so that's why that tank's getting built. Here again, that'll go to a reuse tank in 5, 6, 7 years. Then we build a 1 million gallon tank. Any,
You know, that's a concern of mine, because I don't, we don't want to lose our fire rating if our pressures aren't up on that end, correct?
well, we can't build houses if we don't have the fire pressure. You won't get insurance, but yes, you're correct.
Well, you don't have, you can drop your rating can go down. I mean, we're on a 4 right now. That's pretty strong.
Yeah.
For this smaller town. So, I mean, I want to make sure that we're not, our rating and our pressures is not going, our pressure is not going to go down to affect our fire ratings.
Your pressure's going to go up.
Right.
Which will improve it. But you can't put so many houses on a tank. So once we reach a certain number, we got to build a bigger tank. But it's all related to amount of water and the pressure. But the pressure is going to go up when we build this tank.
Can firefighters use reused water for putting out fires?
Yes, ma'am. But then you got to have the firefighters hooked to the purple pipe, which we can do. We're putting in purple pipe. It makes sense. Why fight a fire with potable water?
I know there's at one time there was talk of what to put on these tanks, whether it's Pittsburgh or Chatham Park. I would like to see that say Pittsburgh.
Yeah, we showed nothing because that creates less controversy. We'll put whatever you want on it. We don't care. I think the town's got a new logo or something that you worked on.
Well, no, it looks like Go Tar Heels.
Yes.
We're all do something about that.
Yeah.
Are these tanks in the higher pressure zone? I know there was some discussion about which zone. I think it was 710, the higher pressure zone.
Are which tanks?
These water tanks.
Yeah, they'll create a higher pressure zone, 710.
No, I know, but there was some discussion in the very beginning of this as to which zone it was going to go, whether it was at 710 or, gosh, I want to say like 590.
This one said at, I think, 710.
Okay.
And then the next one we can discuss what pressure zone to set based on the town's needs in the north part of town. So the phase 2 is not decided. So this is phase 1.
I just have a question about the hospice building. Is that going to be a residential space, or is it going to be office space? Do you know much about it?
It has 10 beds in it, which people that need hospice services will be in there. And also, that's first phase. Second phase has 10 more beds out the back. When they need more, they'll do it. But there'll be people living there, and of course, full-time employees. It's got a full-time cafeteria, restaurant.
Or UNC also?
UNC Hospitals is running it, and it's being built with donated money. They fronted it, and then they're collecting donated money for it.
So will people be able to go inside tomorrow?
Yes, it's all open. It looks good. Yeah, come look. Come in. It's amazing.
If you send it to me, I will put it on the town Facebook about the opening tomorrow, the ribbon cutting.
Yes, 10 o'clock.
Okay, yeah.
10 o'clock. Please come out.
Maybe nice to have a picture. Keep going.
You need a picture?
I thought it was better.
Vanessa, she needs a picture.
EKW.
That was easy. Be glad to do that. Any other questions? We'll be glad to come back in one more quarter and keep you updated. A lot of this will probably already be old news by then. Keep you updated. You'll see a lot more of us on this.
You guys are busy.
Yeah.
Too busy. But we got a lot of interest. We got a lot going on. A lot of people, retail business and things like that, offices. We got a lot of working on a couple big buildings. Got a lot of employees that we're working on. So Pittsburgh's on the map. I mean, people want to be here. It's just giving them an opportunity to do it, and it takes water, it takes a lot of sewer, it takes a lot of coordination to get everything done, so, and a lot of money.
Tim, that's really great to hear about the commercial interest.
Yes, it is. It's very good. Anything else? Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, we'd love to hear from you quarterly. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Jeff,
Jeff Jones, we have you for the Chatham Park Additional Elements Review Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the board, I want to give you a little update. Since our last meeting on August 22nd, Mr. Nass and myself and town manager sat down and we went over the committee and went through the resolution that was approved by this board. And we have decided that next week on September 20th at 7 p.m. here in Town Hall that the review committee will convene and we will start our work on the additional elements. One of the things that was sort of left outstanding was a timeline of your expectation for this review committee to do its work. I would like to say that all 14 members of the committee have accepted, and they are going to be able to attend next week. And I'm just looking for some sort of direction, the thoughts from this board as to a timeline. I don't think the 7 of the resolution speaks to an adopted review schedule. We haven't adopted a review schedule for the additional elements as of today. What we could do is start work and then come back to you all. I know one of the things that we're going to need to do is report to this board after every meeting as to what our progress is. Really, the 20th is sort of an organizational kickoff meeting, and Mr. Nass and myself thought that you all might be able to give us some ideas as to timeline of this committee's work. Is it by the end of the year, it's 3 months, or is it as long as needed? That will give us an idea of the speed at which this committee needs to meet. We've kind of thrown out there amongst just the 3 of us, maybe every other week we would be meeting, but that certainly depends on the speed of our review and the timeline. And once we get to the organizational meeting, all the members being able to agree to that type of schedule as well. But initially, we're going to probably put forth every other week type time frame, so we can get through the elements in a timely manner. I will just turn it over to you all for some guidance on that.
Several months ago, you proposed a timeline, which now has become obsolete by virtue of the time it took to appoint the committee.
Yes, ma'am.
But as a matter of fact, tomorrow night was going to be something. I just erased it off my calendar. It was a public input meeting.
It may have been.
But it would be helpful if we could see that schedule revised so that we could understand what the committee needs. Does the committee need to hear the public input portion of it, et cetera?
Well, before the committee was established, I was putting forth a series of presentations by Chatham Park that would be given to you all at successive meetings. I think it was going to be either 3 or 4 meetings in a row where 2 or 3, potentially 4 elements would be discussed at that meeting. You would then have Chatham Park here to be able to answer questions. Staff was going to provide their comments to you all on those additional elements that were under discussion for that evening. I think the dynamic has changed a little bit since we have the committee. I know at one time, right when we were starting to think about going towards the committee, there was some discussion of having the committee be able to hear those presentations. What I'm thinking we're going to do is still have those presentations before the committee members, and maybe not before this board. Certainly we could do that if that's the pleasure of this board, but I think it would be beneficial for the committee to hear from Chatham Park on a couple of evenings or whenever we have meetings to get themselves familiar with the additional elements and the master plan as well, because they're going to need to kind of get up to speed on both of those to be able to give comments back to you all. So I'm thinking that the successive meetings or presentations before this board is probably not something that we're going to move forward with at this time. It's going to be before the additional elements committee, and then we would then be working through that and then come back to you all with a report. You all are more than welcome and will be apprised of when those meetings are happening, and so will the public. There'll be public meetings. That was the schedule, and that's sort of my thoughts moving forward with the committee now in play.
I think if the schedule was to meet every other week, every 2 weeks, that's a pretty good clip. So,
yeah.
But with that in mind, I don't know how long it would take to do a presentation on the additional elements. It seems that would conceivably occupy an entire meeting.
It probably will for the first couple of 3 meetings. They're just going to be getting up to speed. So we're looking into late October just to be up to speed with the documents and what's proposed. And then really kind of getting into the discussion amongst the committee members in the late October, November time frame. And as we were discussing as a group, Mr. Nass and Brian and I, we start getting into holidays, and we start getting into people needing time off to not meet as often. I mean, certainly we're going to stick to a schedule if folks can be there. But it seems to be, even in September, we start sort of condensing down our year because of just meeting times and holidays that will be coming around. So yeah, it'll be at least late October before the board, before that committee is up to speed.
And I guess an alternative for consideration would be to have those meetings every 2 weeks and conceivably sprinkle in an off 2-week meeting presentation. But I don't know if this committee can meet that frequently to do that.
Right. I know that there's been at least one member of the committee who needs to set his schedule at least a month in advance, and he's going to need to know how often we're going to be meeting. And we have a membership of 14. If we don't have everyone there, which I don't anticipate we'll have everyone there at every meeting, that's okay. And I've tried to relay that to the committee member. Yeah, it's going to be. They're going to be busy for the next few weeks, for sure.
So I'm hearing the idea of every 2-week meetings. Late October is when the individual additional elements might be able to be taken into consideration. In other words, you've got a briefing period.
I think we do
to get folks
need,
up to speed up until October.
Yeah.
So I'm having a hard time seeing proper time be put into it. Consideration in 5 months.
Yeah, it may be what we should do is allow the committee to absorb everything for the first few meetings and then be able to report back to you all how much time they feel like they're going to need and how much time we can sort of get out of them. Because I don't know if we know how much time they're going to need, but once they hear it and they understand their charge from the resolution, then they may be able to better express in late October, we feel like it's going to take us 3 months to give comments back. As we've talked throughout this process, there are certain elements that are going to be easier than others. And you may hear back a report from the committee that says, we can hit 8 of these elements and we can report back in 3 months. that's where we're going to need to make a decision as a town. Do we look at those 8 elements that staff and the public and committee can give comments back on, and we do some action with those, and then those ones that require more in-depth analysis, that we kind of pull those off and wait and study those a little bit longer. That'll need to be thought about as we go through the process. Otherwise, we'd just be I feel like we would get a good majority of the elements complete with comments and be able to articulate those back to both the applicant and to this board. And then we would be waiting on a couple, 3 elements that are just sort of going to be a little bit more weighty than lighting or something, or signage.
Jeff, maybe you already mentioned this, but I seem to recall that your own vision of staff feedback would precede both the planning board and this committee. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I had originally thought that staff would be sharing our comments with the applicant and in turn with you all before those presentations before this board. So in your packets leading up to that discussion on those 3 or 4 elements, staff would be giving our thoughts and comments on those particular elements. And we can certainly still do that as we lead up to the committee's review of that. That mechanism of how and when you all receive all the comments from staff, the committee, any consultants, any public, you're going to be inundated with a lot of comments.
Sure.
And how we deliver those to you is going to need to be thought about, because I don't want you to be overwhelmed with all the comments that could potentially come.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't either, but I really liked the vision there of you and town staff delivering comments to the applicant prior to either the planning board or the public review committee's deliberations, consideration. I think that at one time you even mentioned that might give the applicant an opportunity to make some modifications or improvements in response to your professional opinion.
Yes.
And I really like that idea a lot.
Yeah. I think what we could do is we could have a couple of tracks moving forth, a committee track of reviewing what's been submitted. And I would like, and I think the applicant would appreciate having comments from staff to be able to understand and appreciate those, even though the committee is sort of working on this track over here. We would be sharing our comments with the applicant and whomever, committee or you all, at the same time. And then we would then be able to sort of meld those together at some point in time. I'm sure the applicant is waiting to hear something from the town officially. I mean, we've all had meetings with them and kind of picked certain aspects of the elements out, but we haven't officially given comments to the applicant.
So this meeting will be open to the public?
Yes, the committee meetings will be open to the public. I think even they're already on the town's calendar for the 20th.
How does the board wish to proceed?
We really could just sort of, I've kind of gotten a good understanding of direction. I think what we're going to do is convene as a committee, go a couple of months of download to the committee, and then we're going to come back in the second meeting in October, and then be able to hopefully give you all their thoughts on how much time this might take.
Well, I'll tell you, I had originally thought end of the year as well. I think what I'm hearing is kind of pushing that out for me. I don't think that's a realistic goal.
Right.
And so I've just been using this little thing to come up with some numbers, and I'm looking at dates and how many days and how many meetings there are. And if we required or requested that they provide a presentation in the second meeting of February, it's 162 days. That's at least 12 meetings for that committee. And that does seem, I think, reasonable to me. I don't think end of the year is. I think maybe had we acted sooner in July or August, maybe it would have been more realistic to do that.
Second meeting in February, we can put that down as a working date and work towards that.
And of course, if there are elements completed prior to that,
We can talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay. You want
Do you want to make that into a motion, or do we just want to have an informal agreement that that is what we're shooting for?
Maybe keep it informal.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll be reporting back to you. Okay.
And those of us who were not involved in the master plan process would particularly appreciate notices to us regarding those meetings, because some of us are still taking some baby steps.
I'll include everyone on the board. Yes, thank you.
A final question.
Yes.
Any thoughts or results from David Long possibly facilitating
any of the parts of the committee's work?
I asked you guys at one of the previous meetings, and it didn't sound like you guys wanted to pursue that.
I didn't think we did.
I brought it up, said he was available.
Yeah, I think there was.
Right.
Yeah. And right now, we got Mr. Nass and myself, and we're going to try to work through that. If it comes to be an issue, you'll find out about it, and we'll figure out some other way. But we'll take a stab at it.
So do keep in mind that resource is available.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Oh, I also want to let you know, I understand that you had emailed each of the successful applicants.
Yes, ma'am.
I wrote letters to each of the applicants who was not chosen and urged them to still keep up with the meeting schedule, that their interest was still very much appreciated, and that the town appreciated their willingness to volunteer. And then there were certain people like Habitat that I said they might be sort of an informal liaison for you, but that I urged each of those 15 or so people that was not chosen to continue their interest in the process.
Thank you, Mayor.
We're now at new business, which is going to bring Mr. Nass to us for the Pittsboro ABC Board request for working capital access.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. What I'd like to do this evening is give you a quick update on how we ended the fiscal year that ended on June 30, and then talk to you about this re-upping of the agreement that we made last year on working capital. So on behalf of Hugh Harrington and Ned Kelly, my board members that work with me, we had a good fiscal year. Our revenues were $1,349,000, which is 8.5% above last year. We've had from 8.5 to about 11% per year now for 4 years. A couple of years ago, we hit the million mark. And so we're growing not only in terms of the number of customers that are coming to our store, but also in terms of the price of the products that they're buying. So we're gaining revenues because we're selling more expensive product, plus we have more customers buying product in general. One of the things that we really like, I particularly, and all the board members like to look at, is our mixed beverage sales. And that's the liquor that we sell to restaurants to resell to customers in the form of drinks, because that gives us kind of an idea of how our restaurants are doing. And I'm pleased to report that mixed beverage sales were up over 10% this past year. So that indicates that that they are doing pretty well. We paid nearly $300,000 in taxes. And in terms of operating expenses, we like to look at operating expenses without taxes, because taxes are related directly to revenue. And so this number without taxes gives us kind of a feel for how efficiently we're managing the operation. And our operating expenses were $4,075 over last year. And that takes it, and you have to take into consideration that we were $13,000 over last year on healthcare expenses because of the timing of when we started providing full-time employees with healthcare. So actually, we had a fantastic year in terms of keeping operating expenses down, and that's a real tribute to management and the whole staff. As you may or may not know, the Pittsboro ABC Board is legally exempt from paying money for alcohol education. It's in state statute that we don't have to do that. This board has thought that we ought to voluntarily contribute in that way. And so this past year, we signed a memorandum of understanding with Chatham Drug Free to fund the Youth Leadership Council at Northwood High School. And the Youth Leadership Council will be a peer-based group designed to take the kind of steps that to reduce or eliminate underage drinking and substance abuse. And so we're very pleased to be doing that. And in addition, this year we're looking at how we can find a way to look at some evidence-based stuff that we can do with fetal alcohol syndrome, which is another very serious matter as I've talked to the health department in Chatham County. So we're seeing what we might be able to do there. So overall, we've had a really good year. We have a great general manager in Nancy Gooch and a great finance officer in Faye Ward, and they and the staff are really responsible for the success of that operation. So, again, a good fiscal year, and we anticipate another good one this year. Now, in terms of the working capital issue, last year I came to the board on, I think, September 28th, and there's a thing called working capital, which under state law, we must maintain 2 weeks worth of working capital, and the maximum we can obtain without the approval from our appointing authority is 4 weeks. Well, last year we were $80,728 more in working capital than we were allowed to retain without your approval. And we came and asked you if we could keep 60% of that money and provide 40% of that money to the town, with the 60% that we would keep going towards our future growth needs. Our belief was that we were going to need 2 more stores over the next years, and that we needed to start putting money away in order to be able to fund that without having to say, well, all of a sudden, wow, we've got to come up with $300,000 or $400,000 to fund a new store. So this year, we're working capital is $114,348 more than we're allowed to retain without approval from this board. So what I'm asking you tonight is to renew the agreement that we made with you last year and allow us to keep $68,608 to fund future growth and distribute $45,740 to the town. Now, fourth quarter distribution, or normal fourth quarter distribution, I have a check for $10,049 for the town. The $45,740, representing the 40% portion of the working capital, brings that total to $55,789, and then I have a $1,216 check for law enforcement, for a total of $57,005, bringing our fiscal year total from last year to the town of a little over $90,000. So at any rate, I'll be glad to take questions, etc., but what I'm hoping for is that we'll get a renewal of the agreement we made last year on splitting this working capital issue. Any questions, comments?
Questions from the board? Is there a motion to allow the ABC store to retain 60% of the excess profits for working capital
Well, I'll mention,
for the upcoming year?
that I attend most of the meetings with Jim and Hugh and Ned, Nancy and Faye, and the morale at the store is fantastic. I think the appearance is greatly improved. Obviously, the profits are up, so I think you guys are doing a great job. And I'll make a motion that we renew the approval for 1 year.
Motion by Michael Fiocco.
Second.
Seconded by Pat Wilson Foley. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed.
On behalf of the board, thank you very much. And Madam Mayor, I'd like to give you these checks for $57,005.
Thank you so much. Mayor Pro Tem, if you'd like to take leave, I know that you're not feeling well, and we hope you feel better. And next, additional updates and reports, the manager's report.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor. Let me start, first of all, by I know you guys like going to additional meetings, but a few of these are important. One we haven't talked much about recently, but was set, the date I believe was set some time ago, September 29, the school board, the County Board of Commissioners, and the Town Board set a date to meet at 6:30 at the Community College multi-purpose room. I believe representatives from Chatham Park are also planning on attending. You can see the draft agenda up there right now. If that looks reasonable, then I'll provide appropriate feedback to the county manager. But I can also send out an email with hopefully maybe even an updated agenda if that would help as far as resetting that in your calendar. But that, just as a reminder, we haven't talked about it much, but that meeting is coming up. And you recall we did a similar meeting this past spring. I think we agreed to do this periodically. And the purpose being to receive information on Chatham Park, ask questions, kind of a workshop format, provide some updates, and then adjourn. I don't remember what time we had it last time. It was roughly 2.5 hours. At any rate, I'll be looking for an email on that. Also, too, I indicated that, and you received an email on this earlier, I indicated in my report that the EDC has reserved some tickets for Opportunity Chatham, which is scheduled on October 21st in the morning at 7:30 at the barn at Farrington. I know some of you have committed to attend, and I will make sure that your registrations, those who have committed, I'll make sure that your registrations have been taken care of. If you have not indicated your interest to attend and you are interested in attending, please let me know by, say, tomorrow, if that's at all possible. And again, I'll make sure that you're registered for that.
That's October 21st?
October 21st, yes, sir. 7:30 a.m. Yes. Yep. And I guess I wouldn't be reminded on this, but as you know, it's a pretty well attended event, and it's one of those events. I think I was telling Commissioner Bonds the other day. It's one of those events where it's almost hard to sit down and eat because you spend so much time running into people and talking to people that you haven't seen, unfortunately enough, in quite a while. So it's an excellent networking opportunity, I think, for the county leadership and others interested in economic development. Chatham Park, with regard to just a brief update regarding the Chatham Park issue of the Sanford force ban. I guess it's a larger issue as far as the town is concerned, but Mr. Messick and I had recently met with Sanford staff regarding some agreement language. From our side, we've taken a stab at it. Sanford, their attorney, their financial advisor, has also taken a stab at it. We're kind of hoping to meet in the middle on some things. Sanford is going to be discussing the issue, I believe, at more of a macro level at their work session tomorrow. I'm anticipating a vote on it, but it's I think an opportunity for their city manager to discuss in general terms the agreement and what's been happening with it, just sort of to take the pulse of their city council at that point in time. As I've mentioned in previous meetings, the issues to this point have revolved around the setting a rate that it would cost actually for Sanford to treat our wastewater through the force main once it got to Sanford. And they're working through some budget issues on determining what the actual treatment of cost would be. Also, too, how to manage the issue of their what they call a capacity fee, or what I would call the retirement of their debt, and how long we would be helping to retire our portion of the capacity that we would be assuming on their system. And so we discussed that a little bit as well. Another interesting piece that's come up recently is with regards to their industrial pretreatment program. Now, essentially what that is every community has some sort of industrial pretreatment program that they have to follow per state guidelines in terms of working with local restaurants and industries and commercial entities in terms of what can be sent through the sanitary sewer collection system. And Sanford is concerned and wants to ensure that Pittsboro complies with the standards that they have set in their ordinance, and so Mr. Poteet is working on that as well. We don't, interestingly enough, I don't think we don't have the same industrial concerns not having a chicken plant in town like we might have a few years ago. There are still some obvious issues as far as restaurants are concerned, and we have a pretreatment program per se. It certainly doesn't look the same as what Sanford has. So I think some of that has to be, the language in the agreement is what it is. I think in operation, some of that has to be formed up as well. Also, too, how to account for the Chatham Park built wastewater treatment facility that we discussed with McKinnon Creek at the last meeting. The city of Sanford is clear that within the scope of these 2 million MGD that we would be sending to Sanford, that they want to be quote-unquote the sole provider within the framework of that 2 MGD. So there's a period of time, as we discussed at the last meeting, there's a period of time where if and when the plant from Chatham Park came online, how would that plant be handled once the force main became operational? And essentially, Sanford at this point in time has offered language which would convert the Chatham Park facility, I'll call it Chatham Park facility, to essentially a reuse facility, so they would still be collecting sanitary water for sanitary sewer treatment, but then redistributing it as reclaimed water through the system, as opposed to sending it to Sanford. And I think this is more or less consistent with what we had discussed last week in terms of eventually converting the Chatham Park plant to a reuse system. So some of that language has to be taken into account as well. I've received some other feedback, and I think Commissioner Moss and I think you'll agree, had a pretty good conversation the other day about how we would, some of the other terms of the agreement. And I think one interesting thing that he does bring up is probably making sure that we have some redundancies built in as we enter into this new realm of interconnection agreements and service agreements with other communities, that we have the ability to interconnect with other systems during times of emergency. So if in the event there was, say for instance, worst case scenario issue with our plant or with Sanford's treatment plant, would we have the ability, how would we work out treatment with the Chatham Park facility, for example? So I think there are some things like that on our end that we may want to consider for the agreement as well. And again, we're looking to set up a meeting with, with Sanford as soon as they've had a chance to check in with their city council, and then we'll begin, I think, a review of those terms once we have, I think we have some common ground. I think we're fine-tuning a lot of the details at this point in time. As I've mentioned quite a few times, the agreement with Sanford is one piece in a number of things that would have to happen for us to get to the point of actually operationalizing a force main to Sanford. We would have not only this agreement with Sanford, we would have an agreement with Chatham Park on financing. We would have a loan agreement on financing with the revolving fund and the state of North Carolina. And we would, I think, as a community, have to be comfortable of our overall costs and our ability to, to handle the system in midstream and to pay off the system long term. So work continues on that, many moving parts, and we're looking forward to getting some more technical information from you guys as soon as we possibly can. As I mentioned in the update, Davenport has looked at some O&M estimates for the repurposed facility. So I think we're getting, for the repurposed wastewater treatment plant that we currently have, as well as some O&M costs for maintaining the Sanford force main. All of that feeding into our ultimate analysis of how we're able to operationalize this in the future. So work on that continues. North side water system improvements. I know we had some talk tonight, AKA also known as elevated water storage tank or water tower. And we had some discussion earlier tonight on that. I know Commissioner Boz, Commissioner Farrell brought up the $500,000 versus $300,000 issue. My numbers get kind of fuzzy over the last couple of years. I went back and actually looked at some of the memos that were prepared by McKim & Creed and Mr. Royal, numerous three updates that we had on it all the way up to the workshop, and it does appear as if it was 300,000 gallons that we were looking at for an elevated water tank. As soon as you said that, I thought, might want to double check some of these numbers, but yes, it is 300,000. Again, as Mr. Smith said, then eventually that tank would be reclaimed, and we would be looking at a much larger facility for actual water as needs develop. But staff has been working with Chatham Park consultants and contractors on finalizing some of the design issues. You saw some of the water tank mock-ups. I think it's kind of interesting. One of the things that continually would come up was what do we want on the site of that water tower, and so I don't know if I think in the past we said that if there was some interest in having a Chatham Park logo on it, there was some interest in having a Town of Pittsboro logo on it. I wasn't sure how the community would react to a Chatham Park logo on it, so I left all discussion of the Town of Pittsboro logo off the table as well. So I think if we want to talk about this, if we want to work, and I heard you say that you would put anything we wanted on it, then that's something to talk about. That's kind of a new one for me tonight. So you'd be surprised people get interested on what goes on the side of the water tower. So we'll have more discussion on the technical aspects of that as well. It sounds as if there's some pressure issues that appear to be working out on that, and we look forward to checking in and workshopping that with the board. I think before construction is going to begin on that, so the community I think has a pretty clear picture on what's happening with that project and how it will be phased.
I'm thinking that we need to perhaps workshop it even before then. I'm feeling like that at the last meeting there were some presumptions made about things that might be a fait accompli, like turning the current plane into a headworks, that frankly I just hadn't heard before, and so I was particularly interested in a greater definition of what it is that we're doing. And I found very interesting tonight that you're thinking that that plant would eventually be the reuse plant.
Yeah, I've updated a number of times, I think, on how we would be looking at operationalizing our existing plant and what we would be doing with, in this last meeting with regard to the Chatham Park plant, we talked about using that as future reuse plans at the last meeting. I didn't just all of a sudden start talking about that tonight. What I was doing was I guess in the context of the Sanford agreement saying that they want to ensure that that's all that's happening with that Chatham Park plant once the force main goes into existence.
And I think at the last meeting, we talked about how tricky that timing could be as far as getting one plant on, getting the force main on, et cetera. And
yeah, I agree. I would be more than willing. It's having, as I've said a number of times to the board, it's however much you guys want to do and when you want to do it. That's been a challenge all along. Is finding the time within the framework of these meetings and of these board meetings that we have like tonight, and the number of things that we have on the agenda, and being able to explain these in a concise format. Because, for example, like I said, I can go back and I can show you where a number of times I've talked about how we would use our existing plant in the future moving forward. But it gets buried under so many other things that we talk about on a night-to-night basis. And so I am open for suggestions on how you'd like to do that. If you want to take an entire regularly scheduled meeting and parse out similar to what we did almost a year ago at this time with regard to a utilities workshop, or schedule a separate utilities workshop, I think that would be great. I think we can get the people in here, we can talk about it, we can lay it all out on the table and just revisit where we are at as of September of 2016.
I think that could be very useful, and I guess that I suddenly became fairly anxious over the idea that our permit, our discharge permit, would be either abandoned or shared or converted or whatever, when I know that we worked really hard to get that permit, and that permit is essentially gold.
It's a valid concern. I think the permit, the discharge, it's there to be used by someone. So either we build the plant or someone else builds the plant, and the wastewater gets treated, whether we treat it or whether someone else treats it. Now, what kind of value, and this is something that Commissioner Bonitz and I talked about as well, and I know Mr. Messick and I have talked about it briefly, but what kind of value are we looking at placing on that NPDES permit? How do we, how do we apportion value to that? And I think that's a conversation that we need to have as well. So I think you guys are absolutely right on, I think, in the thought process with it so far. We just need more time to talk about it.
I would suggest that it may be time for us to have another workshop just on utilities. Are there others who might support that?
Yeah, that'd be great. And I'd prefer it not be one of our regular meetings.
Me too.
I'd like it to be set aside.
Dedicated time.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I know it's a challenge for us all to schedule and responding to the email calendaring requests, but I think this is a pretty important one.
Okay. Well, let's work on, Ms. Alice and I will work on setting something up. We'll find a time and a date that's agreeable. I'm assuming later in the day as opposed to earlier in the day. And we can make sure you're reasonably well-fed and ready to go.
I'm trying to recall when the September 2015 utilities workshop was. What day of the week was it, do you recall?
What day was it we had the water main break? It was that very early.
That's right.
So it was sometime between Monday and Wednesday. I think by the end of the week we had it wrapped up. So yeah, it's almost a year.
Yeah.
So we'll, like I said, we can try to hammer out a date with you guys here. Just we've got some work to do.
Thank you.
I think I'm just going to stop talking.
Well, we have the energy charging station.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
thank you.
Yeah, and you guys, if you want to reread that, I mean, it is what it is. We've got some, obviously, that's a submittal of interest. I made some contact with the staff there. It doesn't sound as if they have a lot of applicants for it. Now, having said that, there's going to be some cost involved from our standpoint in terms of even determining feasibility of how and where and why and stuff. Right out of the box, for instance, putting something downtown is going to be a big challenge. And so we would, is it downtown, is it near downtown? But there's going to be some more discussion, I think, that we have to have on that. Certainly some diligence on the staff level.
Well, there's some interesting developments taking place with the efficiency and cost effectiveness of batteries, which have led some commentators to speculate that within the very near future, 5 years maybe, it will be much cheaper to own and operate an electric vehicle than a gasoline-powered vehicle. And so we may very well see more widespread adoption. So I appreciate the effort you put in. I think once again, it's an opportunity for us to kind of place ourselves on the map, and doing that in a downtown fashion, I think, would be really cool. And so I'd love to chat with the Pittsboro Business Association if you think that would be of interest.
Wednesday morning.
Okay.
9 a.m. at the Roadhouse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Great.
And you know that one thing about those parking spaces is they are reserved for only that type of vehicle, which
That's right.
causes me some pause
That's
when I
right.
think about the scarcity of downtown spaces.
Something about quite a bit of time on the charge, best I remember.
Depending on the charger.
15-minute charge is more like hours.
Maybe the community house is close enough that they can find a phone booth behind or something.
Yeah.
Well, there's community houses. Salisbury Street came up as maybe if we're looking at an on-street situation.
Yeah.
If Salisbury Street, I'd say over by Davenport, over in that part of the downtown, I think is workable and it's close enough to downtown. But like I said, we've got to cut into this. Honestly, I was really interested in getting something at Town Hall, and hopefully I have the problem of worrying about which town hall to put them at, but or which town hall location to put them at. But I would really like to get to the point I was, and I was looking at even like the now, not getting too deep into the conversation here, but different models of hybrid vehicles, and when we talk about making vehicle purchases in the future, operationalizing some of these EV stations, not just for public use, but also for admin staff use as well. And there's no reason why we couldn't cut our fuel costs in half just by using these vehicles in some cases. So anyway, we'll see what we can do.
Okay. We have from the engineering department a update on the grant from Fred, and I draw that to your attention. That's just an extra goodie in our package. So we're now at commissioners' concerns, and Jay?
Just one thing, sidewalk on 87, is it still?
We're actually have the bid packages ready. I believe we're waiting for final okay on DOT for the plans. I think we have that, so the easement's set. So I think we're going to go to bid advertisement for both projects at the same time. 2 different contracts. It's a 3-week requirement to advertise, so we'd be talking 6 weeks probably before we had a bid opening.
That's all I have.
Ed? Michael?
Pet peeve. These have been up for a while. It's the erosion control inlet protection that goes around in storm inlets when you're doing construction. You put these posts in the ground, put some chicken fence up and some gravel. Well, the posts never get removed, and they're dangerous. And we've got several of them along the frontage of 15501 where the Hydro 2 plant used to be. Or what we can just
What plant?
Hydro 2 power place. And I would just say that how nice it is to get the monthly updates on the budget hole punched. We did not get it this time.
I forgot it.
So,
We was rushed.
I'll come by tomorrow.
Okay.
May I add to Commissioner Fioco's note about that power place location? I think that there's some old decrepit plastic sign bases also still along in there. So if we're sending staff over there, maybe we could pick those up too. The big flappy flag signs that the mayor dislikes so much, the flags disappeared years ago, and I think
Oh,
the
really?
plastic bases are still there. I want to say there's 3 of them. I think they're filled with sand or water.
And maybe we can get the rest of the active flappy flags. I did want people to know that there was one very hot day last month that I cajoled my dear husband to go with me and with appropriate tools and take one telephone pole. It's the one next to Beggars and Choosers, and it took us 2 people hours to take down the layers and layers and layers of those posters that are on there. And somebody has had the unmitigated gall to put a couple of them back up again, but I tear them down whenever I see them. So that's one pole out of probably 15 or 20 that has been cleaned. The staples have not been pulled out, but anyway, I'm thinking that we might approach this as sort of, and this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but sort of like people adopting highways. Adopt a pole, and and it might increase the public awareness of exactly how ugly these things are, and how dangerous they are. I mean, it really takes a tremendous amount of effort to get those old posters off. And of course, once you get past the first layer, then it's things that happened in 2015, and it's just it's pretty incredible. But I wanted folks to know that any volunteer effort would be greatly appreciated.
Well, I just want to be clear. Now, do we want to start the effort just to remove these things from poles? I think we all agree they're not supposed to be up on the poles, but did we want to wait? I hate to say it, the W word. Did we want to wait until we had the kiosks before we started taking down signs, or do we want to just start taking down signs? I don't care one way or another. We can start in on that if you want, but they might, like you said, the signs might go back up if there's no other place to put them. Is the only thing I think we talked about.
Well, yeah, we have said that enforcement of this particular thing could be a little bit treacherous, but I don't know. We could just. This is not something that one can do just overnight.
I know it's going to be a continual.
Yeah. So we might think that, if Public Works had some spare time and felt moved to do so, that we could get a couple of them done, and then just seeing what. I'm not sure if the approach of the winter means that there'll be less events or more, but and maybe a well-placed letter to the editor that says, every time you all put up something, it just stays and stays and becomes an artifact or relic, and just draw some people's attention to it. I could do a little public service kind of letter to the editor. I know it's not on the top of everybody's list, but it does make a difference. It celebrates the poll at Beggars and Choosers. Is there anything else? Does that mean that we're ready for a motion to adjourn at 9 o'clock?
So moved. Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Those in favor, please stand.